Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're going to be going over gaming news from February 26th through March 23rd. Sorry that this one was being late. I've had everything from work to getting sick, and then on top of that, not being able to sleep due to my sickness. Some nights are just like, 2 or 3 hours a night. It hasn't been very good. And I got to go to work anyway. So yeah, if I'm kind of scratchy or the mic goes off so I can cough, that's just what's going on. Thank you for being understanding and being patient. Today we're going to be talking about the Borderlands movie trailer. I don't usually do movies, but since that's a pretty big game and most of us know Borderlands, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to have an update for Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones. We're going to talk about some stuff about Sony with like their PlayStation VR and having another round of layoffs. We're also going to talk about Supermassive Games. We're also going to talk about Bungie, an update with them and the new CEO. He actually took a visit to them, so that'll be interesting. We're also going to talk about Embracer Group, and we're also going to talk about EA, and we're also going to talk about total layoffs so far this year as they're at an accelerated rate. And then we're also going to talk about Embracer Group selling Saber Interactive, which is not one I really saw coming, because Saber Interactive usually makes some pretty good stuff. So we're going to be talking about all of this. And, I think it's basically what I do for gaming news once a week is just to take time to go through a few hours of videos and articles, and then I consolidate it all right here on the channel. Of course, I don't talk about everything, but really it's kind of the bulk or the meat of the week. If you will, just to talk about it. So let's go ahead and get started. So the Borderlands trailer. Let's talk about this first. So we all know Borderlands. Okay, this was a huge IP when this first came out. Just kind of the chaos and the insanity and crude humor and just the irony throughout the game was just a wonderful series. But there were some pretty good life lessons in there too. It was a pretty interesting story. As basically we follow Tannis about taking a look, trying to find this treasure, and also getting to learn about the inhabitants too on the moon of Pandora. Excuse me. Along with looking at some of these companies like Hyperion. And we also get to learn about Jack. And so Borderlands is very iconic. They've made 5 games now off of Borderlands. And I didn't really enjoy Tiny Tina's that much. But taking a look at Borderlands the movie, there's actually quite a few characters in there. So we have Tiny Tina, we have Roland, we have... oh man, what's her name? Siren? Oh no. I forget her name now. It's been a while. But anyway, and we have Tannis as well. We also we have multiple characters that we'll recognize, including Claptrap. But there is definitely one thing that stood out to me watching the trailer. And I just watched it just before this. And one of them is that a lot of the actors are old. And it's not that old is a bad thing. But when I think of a Borderlands game, I'm kind of hoping for actors that are maybe going to be somewhat younger or maybe even gamers themselves. Now, in one case, I of course enjoy the fact that, okay, they're not a whole bunch of young actors. There's actually going to be some talent here. And like Cate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, and Jack Black, and Jamie Lee Curtis, they've all been in some wonderful movies and also shows, and they do usually all have talent and actually do a pretty good job, which is great. The thing, though, is I'm not excited that Roland is played by Kevin Hart because, again, he's a funny guy, and again, the game series is meant to be funny. There's meant to be comedy in there, and some of it is even stupid humor. But I think, again, we're going to get some very kind of flat one-liners. I don't think too many of the jokes are going to be, necessarily funny. Because some of the actors in there, they're not comedic actors. Now, Jack Black and Kevin Hart, yes, absolutely. And that's where a lot of the comedic relief, I think, is going to be. But I wouldn't necessarily have picked these actors for these roles. So I mean, again, I hope they do a good job. I hope the editing is good. The script writing will have to be there because it looks like a Borderlands movie, but I do worry about it actually being a Borderlands movie. And two, a lot of iterations or alternatives from these IPs becoming movies and TV shows. A lot of them don't work. A lot of them actually fail pretty hard. So we have The Last Airbender. Okay, we have The Lord of the Rings. We have like The Rings of Power, which was a TV show. We have the new iterations of Marvel, the new iterations of Star Wars. We have the Twisted Metal series, which personally I did not watch it, but I've done enough research to know and get pieces and snippets and hear reviews on them. And it's not a show that is, to me, Twisted Metal. It's all about just basically following Sweet Tooth through like a Mad Max scene. And that's not what Twisted Metal is. And that's disappointing. And there's been quite a few too. I'm trying to think of some other ones. There was The Last of Us as a TV show, which actually did pretty well. We've also had some... there was one more I was going to mention. I should have written these down. But there's been quite a few, but most of them really don't meet expectations. And I think Borderlands is going to have a lot of expectations on it. Again, this is an IP that's been around for over 10 years. A lot of people, though, didn't like Tiny Tina's, but we liked the prequel. Borderlands 3 was pretty good. But most of us really enjoyed Borderlands 1 and 2. Now, Borderlands the movie, it's taken place basically around Borderlands 1 the game. And, yeah, the script writing, I hope, is going to be good. Visually, the props and everything and the cinematography, all of that actually looks pretty good. The movie, though, is also pretty expensive as there's a lot of prop use. There's also a lot of CGI, too, in the movie. But, yeah, the guns look good. I mean, they're definitely going to do some fanfare there, which I think is great. But during the trailer... there's already a few scenes that I like blow piss or whatever it is that I don't really think is going to be help the movie really go along. I think there's going to be some scenes in there that are made to be comedy when they're just really not going to do anything. So I don't know. We'll see. This is coming out later this year. My buddy and I were planning to see this, and yeah, we'll let you know what we think about it. Next is the updates of Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones. So these games are officially dying at this point. So Suicide Squad, we got the CFO, Widenfall, took time during the Warner Brothers financial meeting and said that with the great success of Hogwarts Legacy, they made a ton of money on that, $1 billion. Suicide Squad has set this year up to be a tough year financially. And so Suicide Squad has done that poorly. They already know by the end of February, hey, this year is going to suck. It's going to be a tough year. We're not really going to make a lot of money. And this was supposed to be, one of the biggest games they were to release. And I think they were expecting this to be even better than Hogwarts Legacy. That's what it was sounding like, because this was a bigger IP. More people know about Suicide Squad. More people are also interested. But I gotta say, too, that Hogwarts Legacy, we haven't had like a Harry Potter game in a long time, and the fan service was really well done. The level design was pretty well done. It wasn't without its bugs, but there were also an exploration factor that was fun, and yeah, they focused on making a fun game. The issue with Suicide Squad is that the expectation with Rocksteady is that this again was going to be a Rocksteady game, and it doesn't come across as a Rocksteady game. Now, I personally have not played the game, but again, I've watched enough to be like, yeah, I agree. And also some of the choices, too, with how they killed off some of the characters. It's like, wah, that is not what you're supposed to be doing. So many people are frustrated, like Superman getting killed with a bullet. Okay, that's that's great. Again, kryptonite, whatever. But yeah, that just sounds... I don't know. It just sounds totally insane with some of the stuff that they did. And then, too, Brainiac isn't even a real boss fight. Brainiac is just a repeat of The Flash. and then even some of the same movesets and assets. And then also there's the end game is killing more Brainiac. Basically, there's 13 of them, and there's 12 left after killing the first one. And so there's supposed to be 12 more iterations, basically, through season passes. And I don't think they're going to make it that far. I think this game's already dead. Right now, according to Steam charts, 24-hour peak is 650. That's 24-hour peak, folks. 650 on PC are playing. I don't see anybody playing it on my friends list. I haven't seen anybody play it on my friends list. Except for maybe one. But yeah, this is going to damage Rocksteady's reputation, and it's also, it explains why the co-founders of Rocksteady, they left the studio, took quite a few devs with them, and started 100 Star, a smaller A or AA studio. You could probably call them an indie developer at this point, because they are pretty small. The idea is they have 100 devs, and that's how they're going to stick to it. They're going to keep it smaller, because I think they saw that Rocksteady got too big, and there was too much sway with what they wanted to do, and I think they had more pull, of course, to create the types of games they wanted to with Batman Arkham Knight series, which is wonderful, by the way. But then again, Rocksteady, the game was not in their hands, and so I think that's why the co-founders left and formed 100 Star. So I'm excited to see what their first announcement for a game is going to be. Yeah, Suicide Squad, it's done. How they're going to even continue to move on with the seasons, just like Halo Infinite, just like Overwatch 2, just like Diablo 4. I mean, even like with Diablo 4 last year at the game studios, basically, hey, please play our game. Please play Diablo 4. That just doesn't come off very good. And these are some pretty big games that should be doing pretty well. Again, there's high expectations, but they're just not being met at all. And this brings me to the next one, Skull and Bones. So we don't really have any numbers on Steam charts right now. The numbers are being pretty quiet. And so far, the numbers sound pretty good. But I did some digging around to kind of take some time. So read through some articles to say that so far there's been a total of 850,000 players across all platforms, but this also includes the free trial. When we take a look at the PlayStation tracker, which is just PlayStation games, so far there's been an average of 27.5 hours with the median time of 20 hours. So on with the average being higher than the median, that means that there's some whales out there really actually playing a lot of the game and enjoying it, and that's perfectly fine. But with the overall stats among the PlayStation community that are playing this game, the popularity is a 1 out of 10, which is pretty bad. And then we take a look at Steam charts. Maybe we can't take a look at Skull and Bones, but we can take a look at Black Flag. And definitely some people did play Skull and Bones, but we're seeing this resurgence in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Again, this is the same studio, right? Basically, this is the same publisher, Ubisoft. This is their game. And again, Black Flag was like 12 years ago. And Skull and Bones just totally misses the mark. I even made a short on it of just like, they couldn't put this in the game, really, and I'm just having a fist fight with some enemies. Which, again, it kind of looks cheesy and corny. There's only one attacking me at a time, whatever. But even just something like that, it makes the game a little more immersive, but we don't even have that in Skull and Bones. You can't also, be with your boarding party to take on a ship. It's just a cutscene, which is really cheesy. Same with, you can't be a part of raiding a town like you could in Valhalla, that was 2019. Again, that was 5 years ago. And we've also had so many delays with Skull and Bones. We had 7. And the amount of delays that we've had for this game has been pretty insane. The fact that it came out at all, I was somewhat kind of surprised. But yeah, the Steam charts with Black Flag, we're seeing that Black Flag has had a 38% increase as of the week of the official launch of Skull and Bones. And so they've been doing, so it's still not a ton of players, okay? It's only like 3,500. But the fact that there's been a 38% increase, more people are going back to Black Flag, and we can probably assume that also on other platforms. I've even been seeing some of my friends on my friends list out here on Xbox taking some time to actually play some either Rogue, Valhalla, or Black Flag. So yeah, again, 850,000 total players across all platforms. You know, that sounds good, but when you think all platforms, and you haven't even hit 1 million yet, that's pretty bad. And you also haven't hit 1 million in sales because, again, that includes the free trial. And they only would have included the free trial to make their number look bigger. If their game is actually doing well, the free trial numbers wouldn't have been included. They would have said, look, these are the sales. But I highly doubt we're going to get sales numbers from Ubisoft. We're probably going to have to wait until, like, excuse me, summertime to actually get any type of sales numbers, or at least get an idea of how Skull and Bones is doing. But yeah, this is going to be another game that's just going to be pretty worthless. Going to be dead before on arrival. So let's go ahead and talk about Sony. So Sony, the PlayStation VR 2 is going to have some PC support. And that'll be sometime later in 2024. Though so far, the PSVR 2 is not selling. So far, they've sold about 600,000 units at about a price of $550. So we got a $50 price drop. It was $600, now we're at $550. And then Amazon's sales show that the Quest vastly outsold PSVR 2 by 97%. The Quest versus 3% PSVR 2. So the total kind of sales through Amazon of VR headsets, the Quest vastly won compared to the amount of sales of the PlayStation PSVR 2. And so, yeah, they're not getting sales. They also had a sales number, basically, of a launch of 2 million units sold, like, within the first month. And that wasn't even close. It was more like 220,000. It was basically 10% of what they were hoping for. And it's still not selling. They still haven't even sold 1 million units yet. They still got a ways to go. They're about 60% of the way there. But, yeah, they're just not selling. So they're personally putting it on PC support for later this year, which I don't think was the initial intention. But they understand that, you know, the Quest, and there's some other options out there too that are doing much better on PC. And PlayStation, their biggest problem, they just don't have the pull for PSVR 2 games. There's a few games that are okay. They're kind of more active movies or experiences. They're not full-on games. And again, if the launch 2 was really flippin' brutal for the PSVR 2, there was really nothing to pull people in except for maybe one game. But again, you know, you want to pay $600 for a PSVR 2 on top of the $500 or up to $700, depending on how much you paid for your PlayStation, depending when you bought it, maybe even up to $1,000, depending when you bought it, folks. And then you're looking at having to buy the games as well. So I mean, you're already, you know, $1,000, $1,500 balls deep into buying this PlayStation, and then you still got to buy some games that really don't look that enticing compared to what else is coming out, like The Last of Us, like God of War. Yeah, it's just not enticing. So they're doing horrible. So good luck to them. They're honestly trying to widen the market to hopefully sell more, but I don't think they're really going to sell that much. It started too expensive, and again, it's cool for what it is, but we're not going to see, I think, this big, massive implementation. I'd be really surprised if Sony does a VR headset with the PlayStation 6. I really would. We'll have to see. Also, though, about Sony, they're having another round of layoffs. So we got news this week that they're laying off 900, or 8%, off of PlayStation. This is shuttering London studios. This is also having layoffs at Firespit Studios, Insomniac, which they've been a moneymaker. Insomniac shouldn't have any freaking layoffs, period, in my opinion. They've earned their right to stick around. We're also having layoffs at Naughty Dog. We're also having layoffs at Guerrilla, and which is awful. And this is going to affect Spider-Man 2, or Spider-Man 3, excuse me. This is also going to affect The Last of Us. This is also going to affect Horizon, and there are also quite a few layoffs at PSVR. So again, their support to selling of the PSVR, it's just not bringing in money, so they're laying people off. And I don't think the PSVR is for the remainder of the PlayStation 5's life cycle is going to be really a focus anymore. I think they're still going to support it because they still put those chips on the table, but yeah, I think it's going to become less of a focus. Ryan plans to retire next month, which is wonderful. He's made some horrible decisions in the past, and then looking for long-term and said that the company is looking for long-term sustainability. So right now they're seeing that they're burning through quite a bit of cash. A lot of their attempts to continue to make money, even though it is successful, they're seeing a squish in their margins, and they're just not making as much as they were. And we can see that too through their earnings report. So if you're curious, you can take time to go ahead and look through that. But Sony's been trimming the fat for, the last 5 years, trying to make sure that they're continuing to grow and just focusing on the aspects of their company that grow, which the biggest aspect for them is PlayStation. And then when PlayStation isn't doing as well, that's not good for Sony. So they did say too that with the sustainability of the company, they also want provide the best experience for the community. But again, it's all about money, folks. I don't really believe that. They want to, sate or give enough to the community to get that money, and that's really what the motivation is. And at least there is a motivation. At least we know what the strings are. But again, if you don't produce, if you don't give what customers want, they're not going to want to buy it. Just like with the PSVR 2. Just like with PlayStation Premium. Okay, PlayStation Plus Premium. Not a lot of sales on that. And we're going to go over that. I know it's been a while, folks. I've been talking about this, but we're going to do part 2 of PlayStation versus Xbox. And part 1, if you haven't seen it yet, I'll try to remember to link it at the end of the video. Part 1, we went over sales numbers, and they're doing very good in sales. And part 2, we're going to start talking about games. But in all other facets of PlayStation, they just are not selling very well compared to their competitors. And don't forget, too, Xbox has also laid off 1,900. That was also announced earlier this year. So far, if you're working at Nintendo, you have 0 layoffs. So they've actually been very efficient, and Nintendo's doing a wonderful job. If you're working there, you're probably keeping it, which is great. If you're working at Xbox or you're working at Sony, you might be losing it. Next, we're going to talk about massive games, or supermassive games. They're also having 90 layoffs themselves. This is going to affect the Until Dawn remaster, which, again, we've talked about remasters before. I want them to actually make some real games, but that's more risky. This way, they can get something out faster, with less work, less money. And that's why I think we've seen a lot of remasters lately. This is also going to affect Dark Pictures Anthology. So they currently have that out, but further iterations for Dark Pictures, that's also going to affect the franchise. I will say, speaking of remasters, I just want to make this a quick point. Dark Forces was like a 1995 game, which was a launch title for the PlayStation 1. In Dark Forces, I had said earlier that the release date was missing. So that maybe something was going on, but it's officially out now. You can purchase this. And I guess this still launched on February 28th, 2024. So if you're curious, it's $30. I think that's a little much. Personally, I'd probably wait for it to be 20, somewhere in there. But think of like an old Wolfenstein or Doom game. It's going to play just like that. Or like Bolt Gun. Or Hammer Bolt Gun. It's the same thing. But yeah, you can go ahead and check that out. That's actually available. Also, we're going to get 2 more remasters of the original Star Wars Battlefronts, number 1 and 2, with all DLCs, which is going to be great. I cannot wait to buy that on March 14th. Boy, play along with me. Be a part of the gaming garbage community. This is an older game that I really enjoyed, and a lot of us too grew up with and remember. We had a blast playing these games, and so hey, let's play together. Let's get as many as we can, link up with other people from the community, and just have a blast. If you're interested, go ahead and leave a comment down below or send me a whisper at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee. Also, we got to talk about Bungie. So Bungie's on notice. So we know last year that they had a 45% drop in revenue. We know, too, that twice now there's been 2 delays for the final shape. And the new CEO of PlayStation came by to visit. That's going to be replacing Ryan. Officially, that's all going to take place next month. But the new CEO wanted to take time to talk to management and also wanted to take time to get to know some of the devs, see the employees, and kind of see how they work and run stuff at Bungie. And the CEO saw that, with a statement that he said, saw that employees were working hard, showed creativity, and had good knowledge of live service. And remember, too, Bungie already had layoffs. So they already had some last year. The CEO did see room for improvement, and this is what he was talking about. Business expenses, accountability for content timelines, so delays and the amount of content coming out. And then also wanted to continue with dialogue to find good solutions for these issues. And so it really sounded like upper management, to me, was on notice. It's like, hey, the business expenses and the accountability for content timelines, that is not a dev problem. That's management problem. And so management better figure out their stuff, otherwise I think some people are going to be fired. The CEO definitely saw that the employees are hardworking, show creativity, and have a lot of experience to make good games. But again, as we've seen before, if the management is not in a good position or is not doing a good job, they're not going to be able to utilize their employees effectively. And it's also going to cost more and be more expensive to make games for the company. And so, yeah, if I was middle management, for sure, I would be worried. Destiny 2, again, had lower revenue, final shape delays. They've also lost a lot of their player base for Destiny 2. Again, Destiny is all the game that they're focusing on. All eggs in one basket, which you should never do that, folks, with anything. Except for marriage. That's a very healthy one. Bungie 2 could have more restructuring in the future if the numbers don't improve. So that's part of the agreement that Bungie and Sony have when Sony bought them for a few $1 billion. But yeah, if their numbers don't get better, which this is the year to prove it, Bungie could have a complete restructuring and Sony could take basically direct control of Bungie. Which, well, some of the management will go bye-bye if that happens. So the new CEO will have more of a hands-on approach, unlike Ryan. Ryan has basically let Bungie do what they want to do, hasn't had his fingers in the pie too much. But yeah, the new CEO understands he's got his work cut out for him. Some aspects of PlayStation have stagnated too pretty badly, and so he's wanting to turn things around, which is great. This is the type of person that we want. Whether he's a gamer or not, I don't know. I think we're lucky at Xbox with Phil Spencer in most cases, because he's a gamer just like us. And I think we benefit from that when we have somebody that is like that. So let's talk about Embracer Group. There's actually quite a bit on them. And we got to talk about EA as well. So Embracer Group, we already got a lot of this information, but just the sheer numbers were just kind of astounding. So far, since part of 22, all of 23, and basically, some rumors around 2024, Embracer Group has canceled 29 unannounced games that were supposed to release around mostly 24 and 25, maybe even 26, if we put some delays in there. That came with about almost 1,400 layoffs, and also came with closing 7 studios. This included Volition, which made Saints Row. Horrible game, by the way. You're welcome to... actually, I'm not sure if I played that before I started my YouTube channel. You could take a look. It'd be in the backlogs, folks. It'd be a flippin' old one. I'm not sure if it's there. Also, we had the closing of Free Radical, which is Time Splinters. They supposedly were working on another game, but of course that's never going to come to light now. And then on top of it, quote from one of the management at Embracer Group, all of this may not be enough. Like, think about that. 1,400 people, 7 studios, and 29 games. And it's like, well, we still might have to do more. Man, recessions are tough. Or lack of lack of demand is brutal for small businesses. But it's also brutal for the big companies. Because, they're probably not going to crash, though we could make that argument against retail. A lot of retail stores that used to be around when I was a kid, they're non-existent anymore, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, even the giants, they can go down. And I think if this recession continues, quote, that we don't have, which I don't believe that, I think we're going to see some more selling of more stuff. And not just with Embracer Group, but just maybe more mergers, maybe more purchases, like with Activision Blizzard and Microsoft. I think we're going to start to see more of that. And this gets me into my next piece. Embracer Group is actually selling Saber Interactive. Now, they've made some good games. They've also had their fingers in some of the wonderful games as well. And just to name a few, they were a part of Time Shift, Halo, Master Chief Collection, Crysis Remasters, Call of Cthulhu, Witcher 3 Complete Edition, SnowRunner. They were also working at one point on the KOTOR remake. We got to hear about that in 2022. They also worked on Space Marine. They're working on Space Marine 2 right now. That's supposed to come out in September. I'm honestly very excited for that game as well. But yeah, selling Saber Interactive. All we know so far is that they're selling it to private investors for about $500 million. And in my opinion, that's honestly pretty cheap. Because the amount of money and things they're a part of, and the success of a lot of stuff that they're a part of, the success is really high. A lot of people like what they create. Whenever I see Saber Interactive, I'm thinking, oh, hey, all right, this is great, because they usually do a really good job. Again, the games that I mentioned, they did great to fan service. They had usually pretty fun game mechanics for the most part. There was also a level of immersion with the gameplay, and it's just been fun. It's just been fun. Now, some other news on KOTOR Remake. So again, Knights of the Old Republic 1 was supposed to be getting a remake, and technically that's still on the table. Jason Schreier tweeted, "No promises it'll come out, but it's still alive." So we still might be getting the KOTOR remake, but we're not getting it maybe as soon as we thought. There's been some issues. KOTOR has also been between multiple studios or whatever, and some publishers have kind of washed their hands of this. So we initially had Sony. Nope, we don't have the licensing. We're not paying the licensing anymore. We're not going to be a part of this KOTOR remake. Now we have Embracer Group selling Saber Interactive to some private investors, which I think is a good thing. I think that's going to save Saber Interactive down the road, not being a part of this big conglomerate and getting smashed in the face later, which a lot of studios have been lately. And but again, it's no guarantee that it's going to come out still. So of course, when I know something, you guys will know something, and I'll let you guys know here on the channel. But this leads me to the next thing, more layoffs that we just got announced. EA is going to lay off 670 employees and cancel Respawn's Star Wars first-person shooter. So we didn't know a lot about this game. There was some rumors that this was going to be a bounty hunter game, maybe a Mandalorian, maybe you were going to be Boba Fett or something like that, or Django. And Respawn honestly makes some pretty good games. They've made Titanfall, they've made Apex, which was pretty fun for what it is for a rail shooter. They also made Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. All of these have actually been pretty successful, and most of us have heard of these games. But yeah, this was going to be a first-person shooter, again, which they're good at. And it was going to be a Star Wars IP, which we haven't had a mini Star Wars stuff that we've enjoyed very much at all. Excuse me. Disney's keeping that actually pretty tight to their chest. But yeah, now Respawn's going to have to work on something else. And two, just to think that the years of working on that first-person shooter, which kind of sounded like a bounty hunter game, that is just a ton of stuff wasted and down the drain. Hopefully someone uses it at some point. What we do know from EA is that Motive is going to be unaffected, which is great. So Motive made the Dead Space remake. which in my opinion was very, very good. 70 was still a little steep for the size of the game, but they redid some things in the game. They redid some level design. They added some features that they could add into the game because of the technology of today. Graphically, it was beautiful. Ran very well. Almost pooped a brick a few times. And, yeah, very, very good. Now they're making an Iron Man game. And then there's another studio as well under EA that is still making Black Panther. So those games are going to be unaffected. But so far, that's it. That's all we know. Everything else can be affected in the future. And we don't know exactly where all of these 670 employees are, or how this is going to affect the other games besides Iron Man and Black Panther. It's probably definitely going to affect Respawn, unfortunately, since they canceled that Star Wars first-person shooter. But yeah, this is just another example of just companies got too big, too much hiring, and there's not enough revenue right now. And employees are one of the most expensive assets for a company. So, yeah, if you're working right now, and I got some friends too that are struggling, and I just have more and more, it seems like, every quarter that are having trouble getting work, having enough work, finding it, being able to actually have follow through with interviews with companies. It's just going around, folks. So be careful out there, be safe, continue to be an asset for the company that you work for, because if there's not enough money for the company, somebody's going to get fired, and that's just how it works. So this leads me to the last thing for the news. The total layoffs so far are accelerating year over year. So in 2022, this is kind of when some of the layoffs started. This was a lot of Q&A. You might remember this. This was, but this did affect other studios as well. This was 8,500 people that were laid off. In 2023, we had 10,500. And that's when we started hearing more studios. So some Q&A were also let go at the beginning of the year, but then we started getting into more devs and concept artists and directors and that kind of thing. We honestly had some pretty big names too that were kind of surprising. And basically it was all of the big names were affected. Again, except for Nintendo. And then in 2024 so far, we've only had 2 months. And so far we have 8,000 announced layoffs. Now these aren't going to all take place right away. Okay, there's stuff to work through, but basically this works through May of this year. But we already got 8,000. We're on track to have tens of thousands of layoffs this year. And we've also had a bunch of games canceled. We've had over a dozen studios shuttered. We've also had some studios that are saying, look, we're just going to be publishers from here on out. The gaming industry is having a little bit of a setback, if you could call it that. And I feel for these people, too, because losing your job is no easy or fun thing to deal with. It is really brutal. But again, folks, just, do a little bit of preparation. It'll make a huge difference if you do. But, have some money set aside, even if it's just $20 a paycheck, $50 a paycheck, I don't care. Just get something set aside for an emergency fund. And then also work on your resume. No, it's not fun. But when you get laid off, you already have some of this groundwork laid already, and it can save you the pain and the frustration of having and stress of having to just do all of this stuff. It just takes one thing off your plate, folks, and that can make all the difference. And I still got friends that are, 14 months now looking for work. I got some friends that have gotten very, very lucky, but I've had some others where they've gotten laid off, gotten another job, gotten laid off again. And there's others where they're still looking for work too. They've had interview after interview after interview, and some of their interviews are even being canceled by the company, not by them, like it was in 21 or even in 22 a little bit. The Great Resignation, they called it. Well, now it's flipped the other way. And this is really having a problem. Excuse me. I did want to talk, too, about why this is happening. So we got to go back to 2020. We had the lockdowns, so gaming demand was high. We had, well, now we get real numbers, but we had about 20% unemployment in the United States. The U6, I don't know what the U6 number was. I'm sure it was way higher than that. Yeah, we had a ton of people stay at home. We had whole cities that were basically shut down. We also had the supply chain issues, which kept inflation high. And so the governments around the world, since they were synchronized basically on March of 2020, were shutting down for a minimum of 12 months. They're like, well, we kind of have to give people money, otherwise we're going to have the freaking worst depression we've probably ever seen in modern history. And so they stimulated, just created money without services or products, and just gave it to people. And so just in the United States, we had around $9 to $10 trillion. And that went to companies, that went to institutions, went to colleges, went to other funds, went to hospitals, but it also went into the pockets of, direct consumers. And that was trillions of dollars in just direct deposits for people like you and me. And so there was also an increase in child credit. There's also all of these memorandums or moratoriums. You didn't have to pay your rent. You didn't have to pay your mortgage. You didn't have to pay your student loans. You could be forgiven basically for not paying or no marks on your credit score or no collections for 3 years if you didn't pay on your car, and so on and so forth. And so there was a ton of this stuff that people didn't have to pay for. Well, when you have that for 3 years, plus a whole bunch of extra money, and the stock market's doing amazing, people feel like they have more money. We had the blowing up of crypto and blockchain and NFTs, right? And digital land. Somebody spent like $500,000 to, quote, have digital land next to Snoop Dogg, which just sounded insane. All of that's disappeared pretty much. NFTs are gone. A lot of companies have canceled it, have gotten rid of it. Digital land is not even talked about anymore. Blockchain is barely there. There's still some altcoins, but basically there's just 2 coins that are left. And then crypto has lost over 50% of its market cap value. Right now we're a little over $1 trillion, and we used to be $2.4 trillion. And so yeah, a lot of money has gone, and a lot of money went into gaming too. So in 2019, the gaming industry as a total was $120 billion globally. In 2023, it's $600 billion. And so that's a 500% increase in 4 years. That's crazy. That is so unbelievably fast. If you average that, that's a growth rate of 120% every year. I don't even know what to say. I mean, I've never seen growth like that in anything, except for crypto and NFTs maybe. But that is crazy. That is crazy. And so, yeah, we've had all of this artificial growth, all of this artificial buying, the stimulus, the lockdowns. People needed something to do. So, yeah, video games blew up. But we're in a bubble now. And the revenue that we had in that short amount of time, well, that 500% got pulled early. That 500% is supposed to take place over maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years, maybe 20 years. It's supposed to take over the period of decades, folks. 500% is supposed to take over the period of decades. Not in just 4 months. Or excuse me, not just in 4 years. And so yeah, we're definitely going to have a pullback on this. Because we had so much growth so fast, and we pulled it all early because of all this extra stimulus that we got. And some people say, oh, the companies should have known better. The companies shouldn't have hired as many people. They should have seen this coming. Well, then I salute to the rest of you then, saying, well, you should have seen the inflation coming that we had, regardless of where you live in the world. Because guess what? If the majority of you get more money, most of us don't know how to manage it, so we spend it instead. And when you spend a whole bunch all at once, you get inflation. Here in the United States, we hit 9%. Over in Europe, they hit anywhere from 20% to 22% or 14%, depending on where you lived. Some places have never actually recovered, where they have inflation of like 200% or 67%, or almost 100 at this point, depending on where you live. Some countries are absolutely destroyed. But again, if the companies couldn't see it coming, and you definitely weren't going to see it coming either. These are people that are paid millions, hundreds of millions, in options and money and other benefits and stuff to run a business, while we just work at McDonald's or put siding on houses or go to college or whatever. Okay, we are all mostly still young, and we don't know very much compared to the people that make the millions or billions around the world. And most of us didn't see it coming. And so don't be too harsh on these companies, because you didn't see inflation coming either. Okay? We're still going to have drastic effects from this for the rest of this decade. It's not like this is going away quickly. We have set ourselves on a path globally to hinder GDP, to hinder job growth, prosperity, wealth creation. We've hindered all of that stuff. In some places, like I said, I don't think they'll ever recover. It will take decades to recover back. And we still have other things going on too, globally, that are still affecting the world. So don't be so harsh on the companies, because, yeah, we're not any better, folks. I was sure inflation was coming, but I was thinking more like, 4 or 5%. I wasn't thinking 9% in a year. That was crazy. And then the prices, we haven't even had disinflation yet. We're still averaging 3%. Now, there's market manipulation, and maybe I should do another economic update. It's been a while since I did one. Before the short end of the stick is, job layoffs and lack of revenue. Excuse me. It's not just in the gaming industry. It's basically everybody. Whether you're insurance, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in some blue collar or other white collar profession. Okay, some of this stuff too, some of these layoffs are because of the use of AI software like ChatGPT, which is now called Copilot. Google has one now. But we're getting these more complex software systems that can actually start doing human jobs. We're seeing also implementations of like dynamic pricing with Wendy's, which that was a big hullabaloo a little bit ago. We're also seeing further implementation in fast food places where basically workers just cook and the programs take your order. But I think it was McDonald's, they had an entire place where the whole restaurant was just all AI and robotics. It was just programs and robotics, that's what it was. No humans whatsoever. And that's just crazy. Yeah. Pull out the food, make it, serve it to you, shove it out the door. No humans at all. And that's our future, folks. It's still going to take a long time for that to materialize, probably a couple more decades. But we're going to be seeing this. We're already starting to see this. We already know some people that have lost their jobs to AI software as designers. And what I love too, I know this is a bit of a tangent, folks, but I know too that, we have new types of designers now, which I don't really call them designers. It's the same with artists that use a whole bunch of software, that shove a whole bunch of stuff together and create music. And I'm not refuting that it isn't music, but what I'm refuting is if they're a true artist or not, because they don't know how to play an instrument. They're not actually doing anything. It's all programs, right? And I said this too to piss off some Call of Duty Warzone players, saying, look, you guys actually don't get those kills. It's your aim assist. Unless you're on PC and you're not using some type of advantage, which, by all means, use whatever advantages you want. It's your game. But don't lie to yourself. See reality for what it is. But we use extra software for everything. And this isn't going to quit, folks. It's going to keep going. So thanks for tuning in for gaming news. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm getting over being sick. I'm hanging in there. Hang in there with me. Well, whatever you're going through, doesn't matter. But you can have a place here at the channel to rest. And just know that you're not alone. So with that, folks, I'll see you on the next one.